This is a closer look with the Monitor. I'm Craig Blumenshine. Today we have a two-part conversation with reporters from the North Dakota Monitor. Later, we'll explore declining water levels at Lake Sakakawea and the challenges they're creating. But first, a record number of people across North Dakota and Clay County, Minnesota, are seeking help putting food on the table. The Great Plains Food Bank says 186,000 people received assistance through its network during the latest fiscal year. That's a 16% increase from the year before. That means 1 in 4 people across its service area rely on a food pantry or another hunger relief program. North Dakota Monitor reporter Michael Achterling has been examining the numbers, what they reveal about food insecurity here in the region, and whether the region's hunger relief network can keep pace with the growing demand. Michael, I wish we were talking about something a little more fun to talk about, but welcome back to a closer look with the Monitor.
Yeah, I do too, Craig, but thanks for having us.
The Great Plains Food Bank, as you've noted, serves 186,000 folks. How does that compare with the numbers it's previously seen?
Going back to 2024, the previous fiscal year, it was 151,000. So you're talking a 35,000 person increase. And these are unique people. These aren't just, one person comes in and you count them multiple times. This is a single person or a child or a household that comes in and gets a food box or participates in some of their programs. The number of visits have been increasing faster than the actual number of people served.
And that's important too, right? Because that really shows the need.
It does. And it's showing that they're coming back from multiple visits, which means it's a more sustained food insecurity for that household. When I talked to Ann Prifferl, the CEO of Great Plains Food Bank, she doesn't want to report on record numbers at the Great Plains Food Bank. She wants the opposite. She's like, we decreased. That's what she wants. But in this case, you really do need to point out that it was a record this last fiscal year for the amount of people served in North Dakota and Clay County, right next door to Fargo.
And even heavier on the heart to me, and I think to our listeners, is 1 in 3 children across the food bank's service area received assistance. What does that tell us about the extent of childhood hunger in the region?
Well, the way Ann put it is it's just there are more children in households that are food insecure. And she said that the number of children that have been coming and getting this increased 23%. It's the fastest growing percentage or block of people receiving food assistance is children. And actually, to tell you the truth, Craig, I just went to the Dream Center in Bismarck. They're a food distribution site and they prepare meals 365, 7 days a week. They're seeing more grandparents coming in with their grandkids, taking care of their grandkids. And, it's just kids are just in situations where they are more food insecure now than they were before.
Does your reporting, Michael, reveal about the circumstances that are bringing individuals and families to food pantries? And again, these aren't the things we see on TV on the East Coast or somewhere. These are here.
Right. These are your North Dakota neighbors all across the state. The Great Plains Food Bank has more than 200 in their network across the state of organizations that they help service and distribute food to. What it means is people are struggling. Kind of the way they put it is it's inflationary costs. It's gas prices. It's higher insurance costs. All of a sudden you're paying more for these items and you have less money to spend at the grocery store, of which those food prices are also increasing. So it puts people in a very precarious situation where they feel like they do need to reach out to the food shelf, their local food shelf, for assistance. And I also think that it should be telling that North Dakota has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the entire country. It's South Dakota and then it's North Dakota right there. I think we're hovering right around 2%. So it's the fact that these people are working. These people are working 1, 2, maybe even 3 jobs to try and get by, and they're still struggling to make ends meet. Then they turn to the food pantry, and the food pantry is there. They want to make sure everybody gets fed in this state. And yeah, it's really tough to think about that, even when you're trying so hard and you're working a job, that you still need to reach out for assistance. But they want you to know, these organizations want you to know they are there for you to use in these circumstances. So you shouldn't feel ashamed when you go in. You shouldn't feel any stigma. They're trying to help. Like I said, the Dream Center in Bismarck, they said that if they can take the worry of having a meal off of your plate or for lack of a better term, off of your plate, then you can worry about buying that pair of shoes for the kids, or getting the car fixed, or whatever. So they're trying to
School
alleviate
starting, right? We gotta buy
exactly.
stuff
Oh
for
my gosh,
school.
school supplies. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Michael, the irony of those numbers, the unemployment number being so low, that's great news, right? I mean, people are working, but yet not being able to meet ends meet just to put something on the table for their children is just heartbreaking. Is this a need in certain communities, Michael, or is it really felt throughout the whole service area of the Great Plains Food Bank?
Really didn't try to narrow in. We wanted to stay kind of 30,000 feet statewide. But with my conversations in Bismarck, I mean, they're serving 1,000 people a week, doing food distribution events, and they're doing 200 bag lunches a day, giving out those bag lunches every day. And their clientele, they said it's about 30% native, which is higher than the general population of the Bismarck Mandan area, but it probably depends on the area, and it depends on what resources are available to these food shelves, especially since I'm assuming we'll talk later about some of the federal government cuts that have had these organizations turn to more community-based solutions.
Michael, you talk about federal programs. As demand has increased, the food bank received nearly 1 million pounds fewer pounds of food through a federal assistance program. What did that reduction mean for the organization and its local partners?
So the program's called the Emergency Food Assistance Program. The federal government provides food to some of these organizations, but this year there were cuts. And the Great Plains Food Bank got about 1 million pounds less. So that forced them to turn to, organizations, businesses in the community. I mean, we're talking Costco, we're talking Walmart, we're talking your grocery stores. If there's things that are about to expire, or the sell-by dates coming up, they will donate them to the food pantry. And so you're kind of pivoting and relying more on those community donations, but also purchasing food to fill gaps that they may not have had before. And so then you're using your own financial resources to purchase food that you didn't have to purchase before because the federal government had been taking care of it. And so it just kind of gets you on the fiscal side as well for some of these organizations.
So that's how then the food bank actually distributed 14.4 million pounds of food, which was an increase from the previous year, despite losing 1 million pounds of food from the federal government. Is that how it was able to move forward, is by local organizations just kind of, for lack of a better explanation, stepping up?
Yeah, really, that's kind of what they're relying on right now. These surplus food programs, a lot of them are organized through the Great Plains Food Bank. And it might be your local food shelf that's doing the legwork on the ground with the trucks and everything, but it's all organized through them. And community donations are a huge part of this. We're talking, increased food drives. You talk to Ann at the Great Plains Food Bank and at the Dream Center, it's the volunteers. Yeah. It's people signing up, wanting to help any way they can. And so they rely on, volunteer service. They rely on these donations now more than ever, especially with the cuts of some of these federal programs.
And now the food bank is building a new statewide distribution center in Fargo. How will that facility change its ability to respond to the need that we've just talked about?
Well, the way Ann described it, it's going to give them more space. It's going to give them more space to hold food. It's going to give them more opportunity to distribute larger amounts of food. But also there's going to be a community center aspect to it, in a kind of a base for volunteer operations. So she describes it as a very kind of all-encompassing facility. So I'd be really excited to see it if and when it does finally finish. With demand, you need larger operations, and that's what this new site's going to do.
And is this new demand, this higher demand, seen by folks as a temporary surge, or is it part of a new longer-term normal, if you will, in food insecurity?
One thing I point out in my story is the Great Plains Food Bank is also a member of Feeding America. Now, that's a national organization, a national food distribution kind of charity where they focus on distributing food nationwide. They track the number of food insecure households by state. And if they go back to 2020 for North Dakota, and you can see the number of food insecure households and people in North Dakota increases each year. So it is not a problem that seems to be going away. It is something that just continues to continues to rise annually, and there's not an easy solution to this.
Do the folks at the food bank weigh in on what a potential solution needs to be?
Yeah, I mean, obviously increased donations, increased volunteers, but ultimately it comes down to restoring these federal programs. The SNAP funding, when the government shut down, there was a SNAP funding cuts, lower levels of benefits were paid out. In some cases, those lower level benefits continued into this year and even to today. So people are getting less from the federal government in terms of SNAP relief, and obviously the food distribution, the emergency food assistance program. They're getting less in terms of actual food too. So these are federal programs. It needs a federal solution. They would tell you that they would encourage people to call their representatives in Congress to make the case to restore these programs or bolster them, obviously, because there is still a need for it that increases every year. It seems to be kind of in a stalemate with these federal programs.
Michael Achterling is a reporter with the North Dakota Monitor. You can read his reporting about statewide food insecurity at the northdakotamonitor.com. It's always free, never paywalls or subscriptions. Thank you, Michael, for joining us.
Thank you for having us, Craig.
A closer look with the Monitor continues on Prairie Public. Lake Sakakawea is one of North Dakota's most important recreational and economic resources, but falling water levels are making parts of the lake increasingly difficult to reach. Some boat ramps and marinas have closed, while those that remain usable are handling additional traffic. Resort operators are moving docks, adjusting their operations, and watching the shoreline retreat. North Dakota Monitor reporter Jeff Beach visited communities along Lake Sakakawea to see how the water is affecting resorts, anglers, and recreational boaters. Jeff, welcome back to A Closer Look with the Monitor.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
For someone, Jeff, who has not visited Lake Sakakawea, how noticeable is the low water?
It's pretty noticeable, especially I think in the western reaches of the lake. Lewis and Clark State Park was where I first was kind of taken aback by how low the water was, around 4th of July weekend. And it's easily recognizable how low it is there. Some other places might be less so. Some of the areas where it's a little bit shallower already, that's where it's probably most noticeable.
Do we know how the lake's current elevation compares with what would be typical at this point in summer?
Yeah, according to the Army Corps of Engineers, a couple of weeks ago we were about 12 feet below normal. It's been dropping since that time, an inch or two just about daily. So it might be closer to 13 feet by this time.
That seems like a lot of water to me. What has caused the water level to fall?
The big thing is the snowpack, the snowfall in the Rocky Mountains.
The lack thereof.
The lack thereof, yes, over the last winter. So, that feeds into the upper reaches of the Missouri River, and the Yellowstone River, of course, is a major tributary. But several tributaries that come from the Rocky Mountains had very little runoff this spring from a lack of snow.
You talked about a boat ramp or marina that becomes unusable, really impacts then the access points that remain open. Give us a sense of how that is.
Yeah, so Van Hook Resort, Van Hook Arm, kind of on the north side of the lake, is one of the most popular put-in sites, access sites for boaters on the lake. The Army Corps of Engineers owns the land, the lake shore around the lake. They use kind of partnerships with local entities like park boards or park departments, and who then may contract with a resort owner to kind of do the daily work of moving docks to the appropriate level and keeping the parking lot clean and the fish houses maintained and all those kinds of things. So there are certainly longer lines at these access points, more time to get on the lake, get off the lake when it comes time to end the day. They rely on a lot of the boaters to kind of police themselves as far as maintaining order to the situation. But people will encounter longer wait times for sure. There have been some instances where people have had some short fuses or gotten impatient with people who are maybe taking longer than they think they should, getting off the lake, or getting their ramp moved, or getting their boat trailer moved out of the way, those kinds of things. So the resort operators, really emphasize trying to be patient with people, especially if they might not be as experienced as you are, and be willing to offer a helping hand, instead of perhaps chastising those that you feel like are slowing things down. So patience is a real virtue in the situation.
Plus, we go to the lake to have fun.
Yeah.
This lake, of course, is in northwest North Dakota. Jeff, what are resort and marina operators having to do then to keep their businesses operating as the shoreline recedes?
The biggest thing that they need to do is maintain access to the boat ramps, and sometimes that's just not becomes undoable anymore, and they're trying to they will lose access to some ramps, but it might mean putting down more gravel or rock to make sure people can access a ramp. They might need volunteer labor or volunteer equipment, volunteer materials to kind of help keep those access points available, drivable, so that people can keep getting in and out.
Have you been able to discern what the economic consequences have been now for these resorts and other businesses that really depend on lake traffic?
Yes, I don't know if we'll really see the real impact this year. People have scheduled their vacations this year, and they probably maintained those reservations and, made do the best they can. It's the big question, I think, is, how many of those people are going to come back next year if they felt like they had, a less than stellar experience getting on and off the lake, or had to drive farther to get to an access point. So that I think will be the kind of next year's story more so than this year.
At Lake Sakakawea, has the lower water changed the risks for anglers and recreational boaters?
Yes, there certainly are sandbars, logs, rocks exposed or now just below the surface that were certainly a safe distance below the surface in years past. So people do need to be aware of the lake depth wherever they might be boating, and proceed accordingly. Proceed with caution.
Do we know what the Army Corps of Engineers, have they weighed in on what they expect to happen at the lake for the remainder of this season?
Yes, I think, they expect the lake to be continuing to draw down, which is typical in the late summer and the fall when we get into a drier period. The lake would usually peak earlier in the summer. So unlikely to see any significant change, or at least change for the better for the lake level this summer. And really the forecast models that they have for snowfall in the Rockies again for this coming winter, and runoff again in the spring are below normal or below average. And so it's likely going to be a problem again next year.
Where can visitors look to get the best information about boat ramps and other information that they need before they head to the lake?
Yeah, the Army Corps of Engineers does maintain an interactive map that shows which ramps are open and which ones aren't. It's maybe a little bit difficult to find, but if you do a Google search, you should be able to find the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers ramp site.
Jeff Beach, he's a reporter for the North Dakota Monitor. He visits with us periodically here on A Closer Look with the Monitor. You can read his work and all of the great reporters at the North Dakota Monitor, free from subscription charges and free from paywalls at northdakotamonitor.com. Jeff, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Craig.